your guide to the truth. TheNewAmericanMedia.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. If you're listening live, that took only a matter of seconds. If you're listening after the fact, I appreciate that. And after the fact, you'd probably be listening on TheNewAmericanMedia.com. If you haven't been there, please check it out. You might be listening on YouTube. So our channel there is youtube.com/TheNewAmericanMedia. Please click subscribe if you haven't. And please add your comments. I like reading the comments and continuing the conversation there. You know, just keep it mostly civil. It's fun. You know, it's an interactive program, believe it or not. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. We're always looking for people to send us news alerts. You know, don't overdo it. You know, seriously. But, you know, if there's breaking news, stuff that might not have popped on our radar yet, tag us. You know, grab a tweet, hit retweet, go to quote, and tag at American_media_. And if it's the right kind of story, if it's something breaking or it offers a really unique or funny or clever insight that we might not have considered, you know, we might tweet that out to our, I don't know, what is it, 18,000 or something like that. So you guys out there help us participate in the news. Don't overdo it. You know, don't send us 300 things at once. Ain't nobody got time for that. But definitely join the team. Help us out there. On Facebook, do a search for The New American Media and like our page. So what I want to do here real quick is I just kind of want to go through a couple of points, a couple of little headlines. In this one, you might ask, why am I talking about this story? Why am I doing this? Dated 2012 from May 17th, exactly, to be exact, FoxNews.com. From Denver. The Russians are coming. In fact, they're already here. But it may not be what you think. 22 Russian Army paratroopers are in Colorado for 2 weeks of training with the 10th Special Forces Group at Fort Carson, a post outside of Colorado Springs. The two nations' militaries have been conducting joint exercises for years, but this is believed to be the first time Russian soldiers have trained on U.S. soil, Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Osterholzer said. The Russians and Americans are training together on basic soldier skills, ranging from firing weapons to making parachute drops, said Osterholzer, a public affairs officer for the 10th Special Forces Group. It's a first step toward joint exercises in more complicated anti-terrorism operations such as helicopter drops, he said. Quote, "This is the shake hands, get to know you kind of thing," end quote, Osterholzer said. What this is not is a massive counterterrorism exercise. Some people have seen sinister motives behind the appearance of troops from America's longtime Cold War enemy at a U.S. Army post, he said. Quote, "Conspiracy theorists are alive and well," end quote, he said. Some people who've called Osterholzer have said President Barack Obama is a communist, or that the Russians plan to kidnap Americans and take them back to Russia, or that the training is a step toward universal world government. Quote, "It's been an interesting 2 weeks at the Public Affairs Office," end quote, he said. The training is a result of a U.S.-Russian agreement signed a year ago, which make that 2011, 3 years into the Barack Obama presidency. What was that thing where he said, I'll have more leeway once the election's over? President Obama to Vladimir Putin, I believe. The training is a result of the U.S.-Russian agreement signed a year ago in 2011. The objectives are to create a basic relationship between the two nations' militaries and to build an understanding about how each other's military works, including communications. That knowledge is vital in joint military and humanitarian operations such as anti-terrorism measures and disaster relief. At Fort Carson, the training involves only unclassified weapons, and the Russians have U.S. escorts around the clock to make sure they stay where they're supposed to be. These soldiers are not running around amok on their own, he said. The Russians are staying in a military hotel in Fort Carson, but otherwise spend their on-duty and off-duty time with the American counterparts. They'll also take in a baseball game watching the Colorado Springs Sky Sox, a minor league affiliate of the Colorado Rockies. The visit has gone amazingly well and smooth, Osterholzer said. They're excited to be here. They're motivated. They're professional. And our soldiers are the same. The Russian contingent includes a colonel, but most are enlisted soldiers. They arrive Sunday by commercial aircraft and will leave June 1, again flying commercially. Next year, an equal number of U.S. soldiers from 10th Special Forces Group are expected to go to Russia for similar exercises. Well, I think, I'm gonna tweet this out, and I'm gonna say oldie, but a goodie. Hashtag perspective. There we go. Russian troops training together. So, I kind of curious. When we see everything that's happening right now with Russia, with Ukraine, Crimea, something just seems off, doesn't it? Something seems off with the missing plane. I'm actually sorry. I'm typing perspective again. Now I'm putting this on our Facebook page. So this is a blast from the past, but something's not so right. So you got that. Because I remembered. I was just thinking, U.S. Russia. Hang on, weren't we training their troops on our own soil? Yeah, that definitely happened. So let's move past that. I want to cover this. CNN's Don Lemon asking, is it preposterous to think that a black hole caused Flight 370 to go missing? From Mediaite. This is 2 days ago. CNN's Don Lemon has been entertaining all sorts of theories about the missing Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, including the chance something supernatural happened. But on Wednesday night, he actually asked panelists about the possibility that a black hole was involved. Lemon brought this up with other conspiracy theories people have been floating on Twitter, including people noting the eerie parallels to Lost and The Twilight Zone, and wondered, is it preposterous to consider a black hole a possibility? People are tearing into him and tearing into CNN and laughing at him, and, you got a lot of that going on. And what I did when I posted, put that up on Facebook, I said, well, it had to go somewhere. Kudos to Lemon for asking a question that would cause small minds to ridicule the possibility. Seek truth. And you know what? What about the UFO question? What about the hostages situation with terrorists? I've had the belief for a long time that this thing is sitting somewhere, and that the hostages are sitting in a room, in a hangar, in an airport, in a warehouse, with armed guards, in some sort of cage, with bathroom facilities, with food and water. And they're very uncomfortable and they're very scared, but they're alive. And that the worst phase of this is yet to come. They might get reloaded back into the plane. Except now it has a nuclear weapon on it. This story really concerns me. And come on, really, the wild goose chases of China has just spotted this little fuzzy thing. That could be the plane. Come on. In 2014, what'd I watch? Will Smith, Enemy of the State. I watched it 10 years ago. Something more than 10 years ago. I mean, come on. You think the best that they're giving us is a super blurry nothingness, and for everyone to send ships and resources? I mean, it sure seems like they're stalling. The officials. It sure seems like something is going on behind the scenes. Is this a false flag? Is Russia involved? Is it in Kazakhstan? Is it in a little military island sitting there? No, I just, the crash theory, I don't know about that. This seemed very orchestrated, very planned. If we're to believe the stories of, 12 minutes after they've made their turn, he says, okay, good night. The pilots are clearly doing this intentionally, if we're to believe that story. And that's the thing. What are we believing here? Well, here's one you might not have heard about. This is from Reuters, from yesterday. Scientists say that a destructive solar blast narrowly missed Earth in 2012. And this is destructive solar blasts, plural. Fierce solar blasts that could have badly damaged electrical grids and disabled satellites in space narrowly missed Earth in 2012, U.S. researchers said on Wednesday. The bursts would have wreaked havoc on the Earth's magnetic field, matching the severity of the 1859 Carrington event, which is the largest solar magnetic storm ever reported on the planet. That blast knocked out the telegraph system across the United States, according to University of California, Berkeley researcher physicist Janet Lumen. Had it hit Earth, it probably would have been like the big one in 1859, but the effect today, with our modern technologies, would have been tremendous, Lumen said in a statement. A 2013 study estimated that a solar storm like the Carrington event could take a $2.6 trillion bite out of the current global economy. By the way, how big of a bite out of the global economy would it make if, if the truth behind the missing Flight 370 is actually worse than a crash. Massive bursts of solar wind, that was my little conjecture there, back to the story from Reuters. Massive bursts of solar wind and magnetic fields shot into space on July 23, 2012, would have been aimed directly at Earth if they had happened 9 days earlier, Luhmann said. The bursts from the sun, called coronal mass ejections, carried southward magnetic fields and would have clashed with Earth's northward field, causing a shift in electrical currents that could have caused electrical transformers to burst into flames. The fields also would have interfered with global positioning system satellites. The event, directed by NASA's Stereo, a spacecraft, is the focus of a paper that was released in the journal Nature Communications on Tuesday by Luhmann, China's key laboratory of space weather professor Young Liu, and their colleagues. Although coronal mass ejections can happen several times a day during the sun's most active 11-year cycle, the blasts are usually small or weak compared to the 2012 and 1859 events, she said. Luhmann said that by studying images captured by the sun observing spacecraft, scientists can better understand coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, and predict solar magnetic storms in the future. Quote, "We have the opportunity to really look closely at one of these events in all of its glory and look at why in this instance it was so extreme," Luhmann said. So, just in case you weren't aware, and you thought the people that were talking about 2012 were a little crazy, that there may be some sort of global cataclysm, there might be some type of event that could really throw things off on this planet. Guess what? It almost happened. I mean, just imagine if the grid went down for an extended period of time. Months and months. Could you imagine? So that was a little FYI, not since we're doing a blast from the past. This one's from today. This is from the Associated Press. Chuck Schumer said that the Senate has the votes for the Media Shield law. You familiar with this one? Okay. Washington AP. A supporter of a bill to protect reporters in the news media from having to reveal confidential sources said Friday the measure has the backing of the Obama administration and the support of enough senators to move ahead this year. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the number 3 Democrat in the Senate, spoke optimistically about prospects for the measure, identifying 5 Republicans who would join with Democrats and independents on a bill that he said would address a constitutional oversight. While the First Amendment protects freedom of the press, quote, "There is no First Amendment right for gathering information," end quote. Must we always put lawyers in there? There is no First Amendment right for gathering information. Well, that's what freedom of the press does. You gather information. Although we did just sign over the internet for some reason, which got me to thinking, would President Barack Obama try to be in charge of the United Nations after his term as U.S. President is up? Interesting. What do you think? So there's no First Amendment right for gathering information, Schumer said at the New York Times Sources and Secrets Conference on the Press, Government, and National Security. Okay, that's a long title. The bill was revived last year after the disclosure that the Justice Department had secretly subpoenaed almost 2 months' worth of telephone records for 21 phone lines used by reporters and editors for the Associated Press, and secretly used a search warrant to obtain some emails of a Fox News journalist. The Justice Department took the actions into looking at the leaks of classified information to the news organizations. The AP received no advance warning of the subpoena. Schumer discussed the bill's provisions and how, if it became law, it might affect journalist Glenn Greenwald, who reported on National Security Agency's secret surveillance based on documents leaked by Edward Snowden. Quote, "It's probably not enough protections to cover him, but it's better than current law," end quote, Schumer said. The bill's protections would apply to a covered journalist, defined as an employee, independent contractor, or agent of an entity that disseminates news or information. The individual would have to have been employed for 1 year within the last 20, or 3 months within the last 5 years. It would apply to student journalists, or someone with a considerable amount of freelance work in the last 5 years. A federal judge also would have had the discretion to declare an individual a covered journalist who would be granted the privileges of the law. The bill also says that the information is only privileged if it is disseminated by a news medium, described as a newspaper, nonfiction book, wire service, news agency, news website, mobile application, or other news or information service, whether distributed digitally or otherwise. News program, magazine, or other periodical. Whether in print, electronic or other format, or through television or radio broadcast, or motion picture for public showing. While the definition covers traditional and online media, it draws the line at posts on Twitter, blogs, or other social media websites by non-journalists. Yeah, see, I'm going to jump in there. I take extreme issue with that, because with the new American media, we can't trust the people that are giving us that official, air quote, news. Can't accept it. Can't believe it. People are doing their own news. Oh, you're doing it on Twitter and Facebook? Well, that doesn't count. Really? Says who? The bill makes clear that before the government asks a news organization to divulge sources, it first must go to a judge. Really? You mean that's not clearly defined in the Constitution? Sorry, back to the article. Who would supervise any subpoenas or court orders for information? Such orders would be limited, if possible, in purpose, subject matter, and period of time covered, so as to avoid compelling disclosure or peripheral, non-essential, or speculative information. Schumer was asked how the bill would affect James Risen, a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter who is battling government efforts to force him to testify in the trial of a CIA official accused of leaking information to him. Under our bill, Risen would have his day in court, Schumer said. The senator wasn't certain about the impact on WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, saying he didn't know how Assange makes his money under the bill's definition of a covered journalist. This is just absurd. That depends on what your definition of the word is. Yeah. The Senate Judiciary... What defines a journalist? I don't know, anyone that's researching. We don't need special criteria to be allowed to speak the truth and seek the truth. This stuff. Okay. The Senate Judiciary Committee passed the bill last September on a 13-5 vote. Schumer said the measure had the support of the Republican senators Johnny Isakson of Georgia, Roy Blunt of Missouri, and Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. He also noted the backing of Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, Utah Senator Orrin Hatch in the committee. Quote, I think we're going to get the bill on the floor of the Senate and pass it, said Schumer, who explained that other Republicans have concerns due to national security. Votes are not expected until after April, however. In the AP story that triggered one of the leak probes, the news organization reported that a U.S. intelligence had learned that al-Qaeda's Yemen branch hoped to launch a spectacular attack using a new, nearly undetectable bomb aboard a U.S.-bound airliner around the anniversary of Osama Bin Laden's death. In the Fox News story, reporter James Rosen reported that the U.S. Okay, yeah, so it's not James Risen, Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter. They're talking James Rosen. There's a typo in the... Okay. In the Fox News story, reporter James Rosen reported that U.S. intelligence officials had warned Obama and senior U.S. officials that North Korea would respond to a UN Security Council resolution condemning nuclear tests with another nuclear test. Last month, the Justice Department announced it was revising its rules for obtaining records from the news media in leak investigations, promising that in most instances, the government will notify news organizations... Find the word that doesn't belong. In most instances, the government will notify news organizations beforehand of its intention to do so. The revised procedures are designed to give news organizations an opportunity to challenge any subpoenas or search warrants in federal court. So, when it comes to the new American media, they want you drawing a paycheck or putting in a certain amount. There's certain hoops you have to jump through. Certain hoops you got to jump through. See, I don't buy that. You see, because there's a lot of people that have already contributed to the new American media who are not professional journalists, and they don't run their own website, and they're citizen journalists, opinion columnists, what have you. We're going to be talking more about that in the future, I think. We've already talked about it. I think Feinstein was the one bringing it up a few months ago, and now here it is again. So we're going to talk to you more about it, but I want you to think about what the definition of a journalist is. Because here at the New American Media, we don't have James Rosen, we have you. You getting paid? Am I even getting paid? So, something to consider. Now, I want to get to this main story here. Something that I was saying, Julie Borowski, my buddy Mark Clare from Lions of Liberty recently interviewed her on her Facebook page. It says, like this page for discussions on politics, philosophy, economics, and animal advocacy. Token Libertarian Girl on YouTube. I'm scrolling through my timeline and I came across this article. And I want to share it with you. And get your thoughts. She says, not really political. I've seen her on John Stossel. I don't know what program it was. It's like a round table. reached out and sent a very, very last-second request to have Julie join us today, but because I didn't even know I was going to cover this. I thought I had a couple of guests lined up. We had to make a few switches around, and so I'm gonna do this program solo. And I reached out to Julie. I didn't have time to bring her in, but I did talk with Mark about it. I think we will book her in the future. Seems pretty interesting. But anyway, Julie's question comes up on the timeline. It says, not really political or anything, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Is it ever okay to celebrate someone's death? Is it ever okay to celebrate someone's death? And that's the question. And just a few of the answers are very interesting. Obviously, I'll get to the answers in a second. But from ABC News from yesterday, Fred Phelps, founder of anti-gay Westboro Church, dead at 84. Fred Phelps did not care what you thought of his Westboro Baptist Church, nor did he care if you heard its message that society's tolerance for gay people is the root of all earthly evil. By the time you saw one of his outrageous and hate-filled signs, quote, "You're going to hell," end quote, was among the more benign, you were already doomed. Tall, thin, and increasingly spectral as he got aged, the Reverend Fred Phelps Sr. and the Westboro Baptist Church, a small congregation made up of entirely his extended family, tested the boundaries of the free speech guarantees by violating accepted societal standards for decency in their unapologetic assault on gays and lesbians. In the process, some believe he even helped the cause of gay rights by serving as such a provocative symbol of intolerance. All of that was irrelevant to Phelps, who died late Wednesday. He was 84. God is love, ? Heresy, he preached, and derisively insisted the Lord had nothing but anger and bile for the moral miscreants of his creation. In Phelps' reading of the Bible, God determined your fate at the moment of your creation. Informing the damned could not save them from eternal fire, Phelps believed, but it was required for his salvation and path to paradise. So he and his flock traveled the country, protesting at the funerals for victims of AIDS and soldiers slain in Iraq and Afghanistan, picketing outside country music concerts, and even the Academy Awards. Any place sure to draw attention in a crowd with an unrelenting message of hatred for gays and lesbians. Quote, "Can you preach the Bible without preaching the hatred of God?" End quote. He asked in a 2006 interview with the Associated Press. Quote, "The answer is absolutely not. And these preachers that muddle that and use that deliberately, ambiguously, to prey on the follies and the fallacious notions of other people, that's a great sin." End quote. For those who didn't like the message or the tactics, Phelps and his family had only disdain. They need to drink a frosty mug of "shut the hell up" and avert their eyes, his daughter Shirley Phelps Roper once told a group of Kansas lawmakers. The activities of Phelps Church, unaffiliated with any larger denomination, inspired a federal law and laws in more than 40 states limiting protests and picketing at funerals. Could you imagine? Protesters and picketers at a funeral for someone you love? He and a daughter were even barred from entering Britain for inciting hatred. But in a major free speech ruling in 2011, the U.S. Supreme Court held that the church and its members were protected by the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment and could not be sued for monetary damages for inflicting pain on grieving families. Yet, despite that legal victory, some gay rights advocates believe all the attention Phelps generated served to advance their cause. Okay, that's enough. Just wanted to get the overview of this Westboro Baptist guy. Then this one from WIBW.com. Phelps' granddaughter, Megan Phelps Roper, sent several tweets. She's at Megan, M-E-G-A-N, Phelps, P-H-E-L-P-S. Phelps' granddaughter, Megan Phelps Roper, sent several tweets about her grandfather's passing. In one, she says, "One way or another, he is at peace. There's only heaven or peaceful nothingness. That's what I think. Rest in peace, Gramps. I love you forever." She later tweets, "I'm so sorry for the harm he caused. That we all caused. But he could be so kind and wonderful. I wish you all could have seen that too." Another tweet, "I understand those that don't mourn his loss, but I'm thankful for those that see. An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind." And finally, Love and peace to all. The world needs more of both. That's a part of Gramps I'll keep and share with others. So, even the family's kind of looking at it with... So, yeah, tweeted out and sent out. There's this editorial cartoon that's on the newamericanmedia.com over at the Facebook page. It's Westboro Baptist Church founder Fred Phelps Sr., his casket, people standing around, a couple mourners, some suits, and there's a guy in a red shirt with yellow letters that says, God hates you. And there's an older lady. Oh, no, it's him. He has the shirt and he's holding a sign. And the big sign says, rot in hell. And the lady's looking at him, and the guy's like, what? And in the thought bubble it says, but this is what we always wear to funerals. Because that was the question. Were people going to picket and boycott and stir up pain at his funeral? Once again, that's where that quote, eye for an eye, leaves the whole world blind. So that's interesting to think about. And that's why, as I was thinking of this story, when I read Julie's post over here, it really got me thinking. So, not really political or anything, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Is it ever okay to celebrate someone's death? So here's a few comments. Michael says, Mark Twain said it best. I've never wished a man dead, but I have read some obituaries with great pleasure. Dino says, sure, Hitler, Stalin, two names that quickly come to mind. Kelly says, we went to the funeral last week for an 11-year-old girl who committed suicide, and the family chose to celebrate her life instead of focus on her death. At the end, the family danced to Gangnam Style, a song she danced around the house to almost daily. Everyone went outside and released pink balloons, and at the dinner, there was face painting because of all the 10 and 11-year-olds that they knew would be there. Candy on the tables and balloons. Definitely different, but if it's what brought the family the greatest amount of closure, then it was appropriate. Roy comments, that's celebrating life, not death. Not quite the same thing. Aaron says, I think George Takei said it best. May his soul find the peace he was obviously missing in life. Kevin says, isn't it obvious that he was missing peace in this life? And Richard said, Kevin, that's quite a bold accusation. Please share more. What was he, a peaceful bigot? Was he peacefully... Anyway, there's so many questions when you ponder these different opinions. I like it. RNDY, I don't know, was that maybe Randy? Assuming we're discussing Pastor, in quotes, Phelps, I celebrate not his death, but the absence of his twisted and poison-filled teachings. Kyle says, celebrate? No. A bad person's death is cause to mourn what a waste they made of their life, but there's definitely people that I don't shed any tears for when they die. I don't think that counts as celebration. I will read a few more, but the one that came to mind for me, and I briefly mentioned this on the Unhappy Hour sports show, was Art Modell. I'm a big sports fan. Cleveland Indians, Cleveland Cavs, Cleveland Browns, Ohio State Buckeyes. Yes, you guessed it, I'm from Ohio. And Art Modell took the team. That crushed me as a fan. Whereas my senior year, that was the first year that there was no professional football. My senior year in high school. 96 it would have been. Oh, that was horrible. Then he goes to Baltimore with, air quote, his team. A court ruled that it wasn't his team's name or his team's colors. So he took the franchise and turned them into the Ravens. And guess what? They win 2 Super Bowls over there. So, I did have a shirt from Cleveland Browns game. Went to the Browns-Bengals game after it was announced that the team was moving. The shirt said, go to hell, Modell. And then recently, in the past couple of years, Art Modell did die. And I had to confront that too. How am I feeling? What emotion is going through me right now? And I had to sort that one out. Am I feeling joy that he got his? Closure? That I don't have to think about it anymore? Am I feeling bad or guilty that I'm thinking, so long, good riddance? I had to fight these same thoughts. I certainly didn't like the man. But was I wishing him dead? Was I celebrating his death? So, that I read Julie's post here, Julie Borowski on Facebook, and it got me thinking. So let me read you a few more of these comments on here, because I find there's a lot of good insight in different angles. Richard says, Proverbs 24:17, do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it, and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. Brian says, very good indeed. Matt says, that verse has been an admonishment for me a few times, mainly when I felt the urge to nurture hopes that any particular person I seriously didn't care for would stumble upon misery and failure I felt that they deserved. Sean says, how I read it, don't be happy when your enemy is on hard times, because if God sees you happy, he will take away your enemy's hard times. So, best to keep your mouth shut and watch him suffer. Matt says, I sense the implication here is that if God turns his wrath away from your enemies, then those enemies are empowered to regather themselves and are again able to prevail on you. I don't think God wants us to walk around with bitter hearts rejoicing at someone else's suffering. If lifting the enemy's suffering helps end the rejoicing, so be it. Kyle says, Easter, anyone? Because remember the question, is it ever okay to celebrate someone's death? Casey replies, I'm not sure if we're celebrating that he died as much as we are that he rose from the dead. Catalina says, if you mean Jesus, yes, Easter is to celebrate his rising from the dead. Brian says, we mourn Jesus' death on Good Friday and celebrate his resurrection on Easter Sunday. Aaron says, I'd say we celebrate his death on Good Friday. So many slightly different opinions. Kevin says, celebrate his death. We mourn his death. We feel responsible for it. Forgiveness comes on Sunday thereafter. Traditionally, the church is laid out in black. Joe says, what better lesson in tolerance than to live in Topeka for the better part of my life? Though it would have been easy to grow cold and callous toward the man by driving out the intolerable with an equal amount of hate, it would have served no purpose but to perpetuate the same bigotry that Fred was known to preach. Growing up being constantly assaulted with the picket lines of the Phelps family, I learned that tolerance is more than just a word, it's an action. Tolerance was something the Phelps family knew nothing about, but taught so well. That's a good line right there. Tolerance was something the Phelps family knew nothing about, but taught so well. While learning this lesson, it became apparent that my life, my happiness, my choices depend only upon me, myself. Celebrating a man's death would be contrary to that lesson. Celebrating his death would portray the falsity of that in my inner peace, my core values, and my integrity somehow depends upon the actions of others. I will not celebrate his death, any death. You do as you please. Greg says, when that person has made his life's mission to spread hate and to ruin the funerals of servicemen and women while families try to cope and mourn, hell yes, it's okay. Rest in piss, Fred. Yeah. Going after the soldiers. Jennifer says, so basically, you're saying what he did was moral and justified in your eyes because according to you, it's okay to hate someone and celebrate their death if you believe that they're really wrong. Glenn says, Jennifer, it's funny because it's true. Adam says, no, I'm not cool with it. I hope he finds peace in the afterlife and learns a thing or two. Supposedly, he was excommunicated from the church before death. Nobody should ever have to die alone without family. I hope the LGBT community shows up with their best show of love and kindness and not to stoop to his level and protest at his funeral. Have a love-in, not spread hate. Patrick says, I celebrate that Jesus died for my sins. Joseph posted Jack Nicholson's character, who is glad that someone's dead and he finds it hilarious. Tim laughing, I'm glad you're dead. John posted, Ding Dong, the witch is dead. A little video from Wizard of Oz. Chuck says, the best way to handle this death and others like it is to just let it go. Let his memory and hate-filled heart disappear into the past. No news coverage and no protest at his funeral. 2 wrongs do still not make a right, even in 2014. David, I've always found that by celebrating someone's death, you are perpetuating their memory. It'd be much better to let him die along with the memory of him. John says, I don't presume to tell people how they should react or behave to something like this, but I do think it's unseemly at best. I didn't like the mass celebrations after Bin Laden's death. It's undignified. Mark says, sorry, Bin Laden expelled himself from the human race through epic misconduct. He should be unmourned. Just like Tojo, Hitler, Babyface Nelson, and Henry Lee Lucas. Paul, I'm more into celebrating a life brilliantly lived at its end. Makes for a better party. So, anyway, I could keep going. There's, how many quotes on here? Yeah, 1,448. So I'm not going to go ahead and read you all of them. But I did want to share that with you because it's an interesting concept. You know, I went through, you know, something a little different. I'm actually going to post this on our Facebook page. Make sure you're following us. Do a search for The New American Media. Okay. Successfully shared that one. But what do you think? You know, this isn't death thing, but this is another sports thing. I celebrated LeBron James losing that championship to the Mavericks. You know, but there's something very there's something very hollow, something very empty, something very sad about celebrating someone else failing. You know, I want to root for me and my team. I don't want to root against other people. You know, and it felt good. Just it was the way LeBron, you know, broke up with the Cavs on national TV. You know, and we're not going to win 1, not 6, not 7, not 13, not 15, a million championships. All right, I'm kind of kidding. Just the way that he did that, the fact that he didn't let the ownership know, that there was no way they could prepare. Just threw the whole Cleveland Cavalier organization into chaos for years. And I rooted against him. I rooted for him to fail. And it really is a hollow feeling. I can say that when LeBron won his first championship, you know, I wanted that to be in a Cleveland Cavaliers uniform, and he said, I've got a goal, and it's a big goal. And it's to bring a championship back home here to Cleveland, and I'm not going to quit until I accomplish it. He said that. And those are his words, not mine. He did quit. I felt a burden off my shoulders when LeBron won his first championship elsewhere, because then I didn't have to keep rooting against him the way that I was. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't a healthy scenario. And this guy, this Fred Phelps, hate is just not a good thing across the board. I found very few scenarios where hate can work to your advantage. I believe that it was Maya Angelou, and I've said this many times before, but on an episode of Iconoclasts with Dave Chappelle. It's a really great program. They team people up and follow them around. Dave Chappelle asks Maya Angelou about, you know, you saw Martin Luther King get assassinated, John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, you know, John Lennon, all these things. Aren't you mad? Aren't you angry? And she says, oh, David, yes, I am angry, but I can't hold on to the hate. Yes, what happened definitely upset me, but I can't hold on to hate. She said, David, hate is like cancer. If you hold on to it, it will just devour you. It does nothing to the object that you're angry at. And I keep trying to remember that with Art Modell, with LeBron James, just, you know, little things like sports. At the end of these are not important things. You know, a lot of times I do my sports shows to get my mind off the global political scene. They're not very important, let's just face it. But, yeah, getting rid of hate is something I've covered many times, I've talked about, and it's been a process. You know, sometimes you surround yourself with some really negative people that you just, like oil and water, like you just can't make it work. Friendships, relationships, jobs, sporting teams that I keep rooting for, Cavs, Browns, and Indians, can never bring me a championship. You know, so I read her question, is it ever okay to celebrate someone's death? This is where I give you my answer, but I don't know that I have one. Okay, the Jesus thing was it was a nice boomerang. It was a nice little, but what about? And just say, oh, well, what about Hitler? What about these bad guys? Pol Pot, Stalin, Mao. Rejoicing in someone else's misery. I get the I get the feeling that's not a good idea. So, if what comes from this is that there will be no more picketing at military soldiers' funerals, you want to protest the government for the policies that send them to war, hey, I'm okay for petitioning your government for a redress of grievances. Go for it. I support that wholeheartedly, but to go to a funeral side with a grieving widow and children and family, you gotta be out of your mind, man. So, am I glad he's gone? I don't know. But sometimes you can't understand the light without the dark. Maybe that's what this is. So, I'm interested in your opinion. I guess the way I'll phrase this is, let's see, because I got to phrase it as a question. So how about sometimes it's okay to celebrate someone's death? Agree or disagree? Sometimes it's okay to celebrate someone's death. Agree or disagree? That's going to be our TNAM question of the day, and we want your comments, so please leave them below. Wherever you're checking this out. Post your comments on Twitter. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. Definitely check that out. American_media_. And you might as well check us out on Facebook. You got to do a search, The New American Media, with spaces in between, and like the page. What is it? We're 8 away from 500. Pretty cool, because we only started that recently, all things considered. Check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. We got TNAM contributor Blake the Eccentric Wally in the top right on a featured video talking about what a progressive utopia would look like. Check that video out and check out our interview with John B. Wells talking about what really happened to Flight 370. Very good chat we had with him on Agree to Disagree last week. And do us a favor, subscribe to youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. That'd be fantastic. Definitely getting some love over there. It's great to see us starting to connect. We're about ready, maybe about a month. Maybe about 5 weeks away. May 1st will be our 3-year anniversary for the New American Media. So it's pretty exciting over here. I want to thank special guest Zach Barris for joining the program. I want to let Julie Borowski know that I would like to bring her into the program at some point in the future. And I want to thank all of you for listening. I really do. Because you're listening, I don't get to get thrown in jail. I get protections thanks to... Wait, not Harry Reid. Who's that? That was Chucky Schumer. No, but I really do appreciate each and every one of you listening to the program over the past 3 years. It means a lot. And your comments mean a lot. Your conversations, your theories, your critiques, it all means a lot. Keep it mostly civil. Keep it mostly civil, but join the conversation. We appreciate that. Over here at the New American Media, because we're seeking truth, challenging dogma, and having fun. So, thank you so much. We're going to see you next week. Have some fun this weekend. Spend some time with people you care about. Look in the mirror a little bit longer. Don't let hate get you. Hate's not going to get you anywhere. It is like a cancer. It will devour you if you let it. So I'm Brian Engelman, signing off for the TNAM Radio Network here at thenewamericanmedia.com. We'll be seeing you soon. Peace.
Your guide to the truth. The new AmericanMedia.com.